Sometimes there's an unwillingness, or people don't know how to have those, to ask uncomfortable questions or to stay with the discomfort because of, potential conflict. If law is going to mean anything, if it's going to do the work of law, it has to be taken seriously as law. It has to be accountable. People have to be able to connect to it. It has to create the kind of public memory and precedents that are accessible to everybody.
People need the tools and resources to be able to challenge those who hold or assert power or authority over others. Saying that something is traditional, and instead of explaining why or how that might be, they just assert it and expect everybody to not say anything about it or question it if anybody has a question. And I think if you have an Indigenous legal, kind of theory or Indigenous law toolkit that can help unpack that, I think that would be really helpful.
Often I find, as an Indigenous woman, trying to sort of revitalize and resurge Indigenous traditions and legal orders, I find that I'm best positioned to do it here from law school, but I have members in my community that think I really should just go home and make babies and raise them to understand and to engage. But that really sort of ties me to my gender and really identifies me by being a woman. It is a real challenge to find your sort of autonomy and find your decision-making ability, and then not only that, but it also ties the role of sort of motherhood to women, and really would not recognize, say, a same-sex parent. It's also quite essentializing.
When the U.S. Supreme Court decision came down just a few days ago on same-sex marriage, to see that the two largest Indigenous nations in the United States saying this law doesn't apply to us, we are sovereign, and this state law doesn't apply. The questions of what's dominant, how these things are changed within communities, how significant particular understandings of family, how oppression also gets embraced. That real diversity comes from exactly these kinds of conversations.
The skirt has come to represent, for many peoples, the way that Indigenous women should be in the world. And there's various meanings that are attached to the skirt. And for lots of people, it's an emotional attachment. It's very deep insofar as identity. It's meaningful insofar as motherhood and so on. So instead of saying, women should wear skirts and then getting into that kind of debate on that level, the questions to ask are, why is a skirt so important for some people? And why is it so uncomfortable for other people? So just finding ways to reframe the questions, to try and move away from those positions.
Like when you're sitting in a circle during pipe ceremonies, you have to sit with your legs to the side, and you can't sit cross-legged. And we've always, like in school and assemblies and whatnot, we've sat cross-legged, and that's just comfortable for us. But then you get in ceremony and you have to sit in this awkward way because you're a woman and you're wearing the skirt, so you're trying to, So I never thought of it to ask myself, why am I uncomfortable with sitting that way?
Because it hurts.
Yeah, it does. And it's totally uncomfortable. But why did they sit that way back when they did ceremony? And why is that important today? And why should I be forced to sit that way in ceremony?
We see so many people grappling with this question of how to think about people's need for foundation or stability or security. And certainly for some people, having those kind of rigid roles, I think it's important to acknowledge that for some people it's what enables them to kind of continue in the world. So people often are holding desperately onto things as an outside marker of something that will hold their core stable. And I often wonder, to what extent we're helped by thinking about additional ways to put supports or connections or community around people so that the fundamentalism piece isn't the center, isn't the only thing that people have to hold on to.
So I come from a community that very recently signed, through the BC Treaty Commission, they signed an agreement, and through that we lose title to most of our land. Well, they believed that colonial story, that the only land that they hold unreserved, and so the agreement expanded that, but the traditional territory extended to an area that geographically just much bigger. I was critical of this through the whole process of negotiation, but trying to raise questions and hold leaders accountable in a way that was respectful, because these leaders are also, they're my uncles and aunties and relatives, and so I'm bound to them through kinship in a way that I'm obligated to act respectfully. I could blame them and say point the finger and say they're false conscious, like they've bought into a colonial story that they're selling out. But that would kind of compromise my commitment to maintaining those kinship relationships, which are, of course, very core to me. And so the challenge is, how do I ask these tough questions and do so in a way that maintains that intimacy in a context of safety, when my own responsibility to act there is as a legal agent, but do so while in a way that's informed by the traditions that I'm advocating for.
Yes, this challenging this colonial norm is really important, and all sorts of other reasons. And then I wonder, how do we make it matter to everybody? How do we bring this to the forefront? How do we engage with it on a day-to-day basis? How can we really bring it up in conversation with ease and fluency and understanding and compassion? And that's something that I'd like to work on.
It feels like some of this stuff is starting to become more of a norm than just something that we need to do. And I'm really excited for that, because I feel like we're changing. We're creating space for better opportunities to address the issues that we're seeing.
So what's been exciting for me is trying to think about taking up the challenge of Indigenous law, which is about partnership and collaboration. And for me, the reason it's exciting is it offers, I think, the possibility for using some of what's richest in Indigenous law to help people within the current economy rethink our commitment to hierarchical decision making.
I am excited about the fact that my grandsons, and there are 3 of them, there's a baby, he's almost 2. I want him to grow up in the world knowing that he's Chimsian and Hai, that being a raven is a legal construct that matters in his society, that he's also Soto, and that those are the first terms of reference for making his way in the world. That's where we need to get to with practice.